All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about Tampa. Beautiful day here. That summer heat is definitely starting. Yesterday, with the 19th pick overall, Tampa selected Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of the Ohio State University. And a lot of people really hated the move. And they hated the move because it wasn't a defensive pick. I gotta say, Egbuka his floor is so high. His floor is so high. And then, you start to get excited because, oh, the Bucs still have Mike Evans. Oh, that's right. They re-signed Chris Godwin. They still have a dynamic running back duo in Rachaad White and a great rookie season from Bucky Irving. And then we also saw rookie Jalen McMillan really step up in the second half, primarily the last 6 weeks of the season when Chris Godwin was done. But it's obvious, man, like you want the best player available. He was probably the best player available at 19, so that's what they did. But then, even context makes it make a lot more sense when Chris Godwin's coming back from an injury. Chris Godwin probably will not be 1,000-yard receiver this upcoming season, just considering he's coming off a grueling injury. All right. And then Mike Evans isn't getting any younger. And Jalen McMillan, I heard a really good example, a really good point from Scott Reynolds earlier today. He was saying, go back 2 years ago, Trey Palmer had a very similar, almost identical rookie season to Jalen McMillan last year. And how was Trey Palmer for Tampa last year, right? Didn't work out in any way, shape, or form. So I understand it feels a little bit weird because you've got the fourth best offense in the NFL and they're taking a wide receiver, something that they really didn't need unless Chris Godwin wasn't re-signed or it wasn't like a desperate, dire need. The room, long-term, this is a great move. So Baker Mayfield's going to experience throwing to 4 good wide receivers next season. And Amik is, by the way, he led the Ohio State University in career catches. He had like over 200, like 203, 205 total catches. And he's played behind, this past season, Jeremiah Smith, Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, JSN. Like he's played behind all of these wide receivers. And so even if his ceiling is wide receiver number 2, he's going to be one of the best wide receiver 2s in the NFL. And Chris Godwin almost comes to my mind. Could Chris Godwin be wide receiver 1 on other teams? 100,000%. But is he more suited to being a wide receiver, a really great wide receiver number 2? I think personally the latter is a little bit more. And then so with the defense, like I'm going to pull up this visual here. We'll do this angle. This is a tweet here from Aaron Schill. For anyone questioning the Emeka Egbuka pick, Jason knows much more than you. And it's true. Look at how good he drafts. And so, look, man, people were up in arms all day today about Tampa Bay's draft. Tampa's defensive secondary last year was obliterated. And so they had the 16th ranked defense in the NFL. All right. They were the 4th best rush defense in the league. 4th best rush defense in the league. They were also 6th in sacks. So all these people want, more edge rushers. Why didn't you go with an edge rusher? They were 6th in sacks last season. All right. The big fatal flaw for Tampa Bay last season came defensive secondary wise because they were decimated. Whether it was Winfield, one guy would get hurt, and then when he came back healthy, someone else would get hurt, and then someone else would get banged up. And then when the injured guy came back, someone would get banged up. Like they were injured the entire time. And you look at this graph here, almost every single player, only 2 guys on the offensive, penciled in starters were brought in via free agency. Defensively, the same exact thing, and specifically Hassan Reddick this past offseason. So I think guys like Kalijah Kancey about to turn into a star. Yaya Diaby had 20 quarterback hits. I know he regressed in the sack department at linebacker, but he had 20 quarterback hits. I mean, he's entering year 3. Servassier Dennis, he had 22 tackles in 4 games for Tampa Bay, 3 complete games for Tampa Bay last season. So, that linebacker room, Levante's coming back. I know they're going to get a linebacker, probably here in the second round. We'll talk about that in just one second, but it was important to keep in mind how homegrown this Tampa Bay team is. And like I said, man, defensively, I don't really have the concerns that a lot of people do. And I think even just considering that we're in an offensive era, we've got this on the screen here. This is just PFF going through every single pick in the first round, and they gave an average grade for Tampa at 19. Despite having various needs on defense, Tampa takes the long-term approach at pass catcher. Mike Evans is approaching 32. Chris Godwin's coming off an injury, so you draft an instant contributor and a future insurance policy in Egbuka. I've got a crazy stat here. Let me pull it up. He was 48 of his 83 catches resulted in first downs last season, and he also had 13 of 22 in contested catches and also had 26 explosive plays. Like Steve Smith made a video breaking this down 3 days ago. So like a couple of days before the draft, Steve Smith was like, Tampa should draft Emeka. They should draft this guy. So looking at day two, another PFF article, they're just looking at day two needs for all the 32 teams, and they've got Tampa here. Jihad Campbell was mocked in the second round in a lot. He just got picked up at the end of the first round. So they went with Demetrius Knight Jr., linebacker out of South Carolina. My whole family on my dad's side went to University of South Carolina, so I'm a huge biased Gamecock fan, and this would be game-changing. But then there's also that linebacker out of UCLA. They could also go defensive back. They could go defensive line. Tampa can go in a multitude of different ways. And another thing I want to just finish on here is I kind of even touched on it a while ago. So keep in mind, Liam Cohen is now the head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the new offensive coordinator for Tampa is Josh Grizzard, who technically doesn't even have play calling experience. So there was a really bad 4-game stretch last season, and I believe it was exactly in this order. Baltimore, because we almost went to that game, Atlanta, Kansas City, and San Francisco. They went on a brutal 4-game losing streak. And that was when Chris Godwin got injured. That was when Mike Evans was banged up. And so I know you're playing Kansas City, and I know you're playing, even on paper, a good still San Francisco team. Atlanta, Kirk Cousins at that point, it was not the end of Atlanta, and Atlanta got the better of Tampa twice last season. But Baltimore's Baltimore, I get it. But my point is, the offense suffered immensely last season when Chris Godwin was done for the season and Mike Evans was banged up. So just given a young, inexperienced signal caller in the new offensive coordinator as many options as humanly possible. Keep in mind, man, Tampa's got a really solid offensive line. They've got a phenomenal running back duo that just leapfrogged being dead last in the league in rushing for 3 consecutive seasons, all the way to 4th in the league because of Rashad White and Bucky Irving and the offensive line, and Baker Mayfield doing his thing. He had a great season. So I'm really excited about that draft pick. Like I said, I know, edge rushers, you could always use as many edge rushers, linebackers, defensive backs. There's defensive needs Tampa has, and wide receiver wasn't the most pressing. But the old adage is don't draft off of want, don't draft off of need. Don't draft off of want. What the hell? Take the best player available. That's what I'm trying to say here. Take the best player available in the NFL draft. And that's what Tampa did, at least in my opinion. So the next couple of years, I think that pick's going to make a lot of sense. And keep in mind, the GM knows exactly what he is doing, and the draft is far from over. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll do a day 2 video tomorrow. And give me a grade for Emeka down below. Peace.